Okay, so let's test it out and see if it is actually working. As you can see, the name of the function is ChatGPT-5. So let's use that here. So if we were to do it like this, ChatGPT-5, and then we passed something, right? So in this case, you can see that what it receives two things, the prompt and if there are actually some context. But if you don't have context, it will just default to this. So in this case, just press like 2 plus 2, right? That's it. And you can see that 2 plus 2 is equal to 4. All right, guys, so short and sweet how you can connect ChatGPT to a Google Sheet. In this tutorial, I'm going to explain how to build a tool here in Google Sheets that basically will make a call to ChatGPT-5 and then it will return something to a Google Sheet, right? So just before I get into this, to give you an example, so we will call it just using a formula like this, ChatGPT-5, and then you can input something and then it will return the response in that cell. That's how I wanted to build this tool. So here in this new model, we have two new options that we can modify. The first one is verbosity. So in verbosity is how concise you want the model to be. So we have three options: high, medium, and low. And also we have another option which is effort. And here we have four options: high, medium, low, and minimal. So this is how much you want the model to think, to reason. If you want to see more details about it, I'm going to put this in the description. This is from the documentation itself. But here you can see also like what the reasoning effort is doing, and then here verbosity. Yeah, so this is what we will have in the spreadsheet, right? So we will have three options. We can also change the model. So we have three options: ChatGPT-5, Mini, and Nano. The reasoning that I was mentioning, so we have four options, and then the verbose, right? So once you select this, you can call the model, as I explained, using a formula like this, right? ChatGPT-5, and then you can just pass whatever you want there. This is without any add-ons or anything of that, like purely using code, okay? And then I have another two things here. So I know that sometimes it's useful to use this with context. Sometimes, like you might need it only like, okay, you have like what's 2 plus 2, right? So that's simple. So in that case, we could have only the formula to reply to one thing. However, sorry, here. However, maybe you have like already some text and you want to make calls to that API, but like send also some context. So maybe you have something like a paragraph here, and then you want to make questions regarding that paragraph, right? So in that case, it will be useful to have another way of sending context to a model. So I'm going to explain that how to do it, all right? All right, so I just spin off a new spreadsheet, doesn't have anything, brand new, so you guys can see how I'm doing everything from scratch. So before I get into the code, we can set up the config sheet here. So we could have a config sheet that it will have the options, so we can select what will be the model, the verbose, and the resonant effort. So you could have it like pretty straightforward without making many edits. So you could just have like literally the model, the reasoning, and verbose headers like this, and then you just input whatever you want there, right? But maybe for some of you guys, you wanted to have a little bit more dynamic, so you want to change the options and see and test things. So I will do it that way first. So you can have just the options here, right? So we have what's the option for the model, and these are the options for reasoning and verbose, right? So you could have a drop down here, so you insert a drop down, and then you can have a drop down from range. You select what will be the range. So this is for the model, and then we can change this to arrow here, so it looks better. I think this looks better. So you can see here that we select this. Let's do the same for reasoning. Just we add a rule, drop down from range. Reasoning, we have for reasoning these four options, right? So we select that. And then for verbose, we only have these three options: high, medium, and low. So let's do that as well. From range, these three. Okay, that's it. Maybe you can hide this if you don't want to see it or something, right? So let's just hide that. So it looks good. Okay. Okay, so we have the option for model, the options here for reasoning, and the options for verbose. Now let's get into the code so we can start building this. So you go to app script. Okay, so once we are here in the code editor, we can start building this. The script is pretty straightforward. We only need three things. So first we're gonna code a config that's where we can change things like the token, right? Then we will have another function that will load up all the variables that we set up here in config, the sheet, and then we will have another function that will make the call to API itself. So let's start with config, right? So here, as I mentioned, we can change the OpenAI key. We can set up what will be the sheet name and this default system prompt. So let me explain. So this is the API key, how to get the API key. So you go to platformopenai.com and then here you can go to API keys and you just create a key. So we can just give it a name, test3, and you select a project and then create a key. And then you copy that key and here you just paste it, right? So that's the key, API key. So this variable config sheet name is what I had here, config, right? So this, what will be the name of the sheet where the config is. You can change this to another thing if you want, and then you just change the name here. And then what is this default system prompt? So as I mentioned in the beginning, I will build this with two options. One, that we can use it without context, so just like a straight 2 plus 2 and then gives you 4. That's it, pretty simple. But maybe you want to pass some context, right? So the question that is passing also has another context from in another cell. So that's why here this is useful. So if it is the first case without context, we'll just pass a default system prompt. Will be like, you are a helpful assistant. That's it, right? But if you're passing actually some context, well, this will be overwritten and then we will have the context that we're passing. That's the logic here. Then once you're done with that, we have the next function that I mentioned that is loading the model, the effort, and the verbosity from the sheet, right? So here you can see that is a pretty simple function. First step, we are just looking up the sheet, right? So we're looking up for config, and then once we found config, we're gonna get the values from A2, which is this one, then B2, and then C2. You can see it here, and then it's just setting up to be model, effort, and verbosity. And that's pretty much it, it's returning those values. That's what this function is doing. Now, the next function that we need is making the call to the API, right? So this is a little bit longer, but it's also straightforward. So step one, we are loading what you just have here, right? Or what is the model, the effort, and the verbosity. And here in step two, this step is for what I mentioned about, for about context or no context. So pretty much here, it starts with nothing. And then if there are some context, because I will make it dynamic that we can pass multiple cells for context, doesn't need to be just one cell. So here just creating, it's like flattening the array, right? So if there are multiple cells, you're just gonna take everything that's gonna append it, right? In that case, it will be useful. But if nothing, well, just defaults to a default system prompt that we had here. Then this step 3 is making the call, right? You know, making a call to this URL. Yeah, and also this is something useful that might be important to mention, and is that, as you can see in the previous models, the endpoint was completions, chat completions, but now I'm using here responses. So that's something that might be important. So if you go to the documentation that I'm going to put in the description, you can see here that it says migrate to responses API. So it's pretty much the same thing that we were used to do with chat completions. The only thing is that now it's using the responses API, which is another endpoint, but it gives you like more flexibility to do some things. So if any of you guys want to go more in depth about it, you can just go here, migrate to responses API, you can see what it's actually doing and the options that you have. Okay. But for the test that we have here, you could use both if you wanted to. But let's go with the responses, which is the one that they're promoting as the new one. And that's it, you just pass the model, the sister prompt, and then the reasoning and the verbosity, and then that's it. Then step 4, you are making a request to the endpoint. Well, you are just using URL fetch app, which is the way to make calls from app script. And then once you return a response, this is actually just to handling errors in case something happens. So for example, if it is success is at 200, then we continue. If there's something, it throws an error, right? This is just in case something happens. You don't want to, let's say you don't have a credit, the API, right? Like you have to have credit, like at least $5, right? But maybe you don't have anything, or you are low on funds or something, it will throw you an error. But if you don't have this, it will break. But in this case, it won't break, right? And then step 6 is pretty much returning the message. So we are just parsing whatever the API is giving us back, and then we just put it in the cell. Okay, so let's test it out and see if it is actually working. As you can see, the name of the function is ChatGPT-5. So let's use that here. So let's first choose something, a model. So we can go with ChatGPT Mini. Then for reasoning, we can have, let's put it like, let's make the first test simple. So slow and verbose slow. We want it to be straightforward. So if we were to do it like this, ChatGPT 5, and then we passed something, right? So in this case, you can see that what it receives two things, the prompt and if there are actually some context. But if you don't have context, it will just default to this. So in this case, just press like 2 plus 2, right? That's it. And you can see that 2 plus 2 is equal to 4. And let's see if we try with Nano. Yeah, if you use, that's what I mentioned, like it's cool to play with the options here. Here it went through explain like 2 plus 2 equals 4, but maybe you just want it to 4, right? So in this case, Nano is more straightforward, so you can see. But now let's try with some context, right? So let's see, for example, you can say, hi. Let's say you have this cells as context. So hi, my name is Nicolas, right? So this is the context. And let's ask what's the name. Let's put this like, what's the name? And then we pass some context, right? So in this case, this is the context, as you can see. Yeah, you see, your name is Nicolas. Nice to meet you, Nicolas. Yeah, but again, you can play with this. Maybe let's make this high. If maybe give us something else, like more verbose. Yeah, you can see. Well, actually, that's important. So maybe you can see that we need to. Okay, now it should work. Yeah, you see now it gave us more things. Like it wasn't straightforward. You see. And yeah, that's pretty much the idea with this model. You can play with it, and might be useful in your workflows. Okay, so if you like this video, like and subscribe. It helps me a lot. All right, thank you. Bye.